Well, it is 8:11. The polls have closed across Minnesota for more than 50 local elections and dozens more special elections. Thanks for joining us online tonight as we get minute-by-minute results. I'm Randy Meyer, joined, of course, by my colleagues Kelsey and Amy tonight as well.
And we know that voting in Minneapolis, you guys, has already sent a record number of people to the polls. So it'll be interesting to see how those numbers shake out as the night goes on.
Throughout the day at polling sites, not only are the mayor and city council up for election, but the ballot question receiving the most attention is question number 2, the future of the Minneapolis Police Department, whether or not to replace the police department with a Department of Public Safety. Now, right now, of course, polls just closing 12 minutes ago. We don't have any results, but we'll continue to watch as those precincts report to give you the latest information.
That is a hot one, and that's one will be watched all around the country. This also being watched closely. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey is also in a tough fight for a second term because of Minneapolis's ranked choice voting. The results you're seeing or will see throughout the night are percentages of first choice votes that each candidate gets. The winner needs to break 50%. In ranked choice voting, less popular candidates' votes are distributed up the line to more popular candidates until someone gets above that 50%. Again, this is the board you'll see tonight. Obviously, there'll be numbers in them throughout the night, and we will give you the updates.
And we have the same ranked choice over in St. Paul, where St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter is also running for a second term, and he is running against a field of 7 other candidates. So, as Randy was saying, it's a redistribution system, and the candidates with the fewest votes will be eliminated as we go through the night. But if you'll remember, 4 years ago, Melvin Carter took this with 50.86%. There was never a second round, so folks will be looking tonight to see how that shakes out as well.
Yeah, and voters, Amy, in St. Paul, as you know, also voted on whether to enact one of the strictest rent control measures in the nation. Basically, this is what it says, and this is unique. Another one that cities all around the country are watching. It would control rent to a 3% increase only per year, and that city voters and city residents and city leaders say is a result of limited rental facilities in St. Paul and higher than normal rental prices in the city of St. Paul.
And if they vote yes, it would become one of the strictest policies in the country as well. Also in Minneapolis, they're voting on rent control as well as a ballot question. A little bit different, though, in Minneapolis than in St. Paul. In Minneapolis, this measure would give city council the authority to basically come up with a rent control plan. It would give them a permission slip that they can then vote on themselves, or they can put a specific plan to the voters to see how they would feel about it.
Now, around the metro, there are also elections for mayor and school board seats, and even across the state. Now, you can find those results as they come in tonight on fox9.com.
All right, Fox 9 reporters are monitoring races all across the Twin Cities for you tonight, bringing you reaction from candidates on each side of the ballot. But first, let's go to our political reporter, Theo Keith. He's been analyzing this all year long, and today is sort of the pinnacle of all that. What are the expectations, Theo?
Well, a few expectations by the end of the night. First of all, because the ballot questions aren't subject to ranked choice voting, we should know within a couple of hours now whether Minneapolis is going to have a police department next month, about 30 days from now. That'll obviously be the big story coming out of tonight. We should also know, you mentioned Mayor Melvin Carter in St. Paul won 4 years ago without having to go to a second round of ranked choice voting. He faces rather minimal opposition again tonight, so it may be again true that we know that Mayor Carter has been reelected. In Minneapolis, though, we are not going to know the winner of the mayor's race tonight. What we may have a very good indication of, though, is whether the incumbent, Jacob Frey, has, say, 44, 45, 46% of first choice votes. If he gets to a number like that, he's very likely to get to the 50% threshold on later rounds of first choice of ranked choice voting. If he has, say, 42, 41, 40 or lower, well, his top challengers who are running a strategy of don't rank Frey, they may have a much better chance of success running that strategy. So again, we'll likely know, we'll almost certainly know in a couple of hours whether Minneapolis will have a police department. We may likely know who's going to be the mayor of St. Paul, but we will not know by the end of tonight, more than likely, who is going to be the mayor of Minneapolis.
And Theo, as long as I have you there, and maybe our producers can bring up that mayor of Minneapolis board quickly. We know we don't have results, but we can see some of the candidates that are involved there, aside from the current mayor. Give us a little bit of sense, and we talked about this in the days leading into tonight's election, about how Kate Knuth and Sheila Nejad sort of teamed up in this ranked choice voting system.
affords is this strategy. You have to play this coalition game if you're one of the candidates. So their policy proposals align. They are both for question 2. They are for this public safety department. And so they decided, because they are more aligned than either one of them with the incumbent, Jacob Fry, that they were going to team up essentially. They were going to say to their supporters, we are going to rank each other 1 and 2. Don't rank Mayor Fry on your ballot. In other words, don't give him the chance on a third choice, third round, to get any of your votes. So that's the type of strategy that ranked choice voting affords. The hope is from one of those 2 candidates that once one of the 2 of them is eliminated, the eliminated candidate's supporters will then throw their votes to the other candidate, allowing them to leapfrog Fry in later rounds of ranked choice voting.
All right.
We have so much to watch tonight, Theo. We look forward to your coverage. Now let's take a look at that ballot question number 2 in Minneapolis, whether or not to replace the police department with a Department of Public Safety. And again, we are still waiting for those results to come in, only 17 minutes past the hour, and the polls just closed. It would take 51% of the vote for this to pass, and we will continue to watch those numbers. As Theo said, we'll probably know the result later tonight. And tonight we have team coverage of both sides of that question.
Our Mary McGuire has been talking to people who want to keep the Minneapolis Police Department intact as is.
We begin though with Paul Bloom. Paul's been speaking with supporters of the amendment. He joins us live now from outside the Yes for Minneapolis. That is the number 2 question on the ballot, election night party. Paul?
Randy, a history-making day in the city of Minneapolis. Of course, what began as a grassroots movement now nearly 18 months ago, of course, ignited by the murder of George Floyd on the streets of South Minneapolis, gathering 20,000 signatures to get this ballot question, this charter amendment question on the ballot. And now the polls are closed. The ballots being counted as we speak. And the organization that basically spearheaded or is the face of this movement, Yes for Minneapolis, getting ready to celebrate their accomplishments. Frankly, we expect their party to get going around 8:30, so about 10 minutes away. They'll invite media inside, and we will begin to hear from them about this initiative. And we will see, as Theo mentioned, when the votes are counted, if in fact Minneapolis will retain its police department or whether police officers will be folded up into a new public safety agency. Of course, talking about question 2, it would create a brand new public safety department that takes a comprehensive public health approach, a commissioner at the helm, no more Chief Arredondo. If it passes, then the city's constitutional language or the charter will change. Gone would be the language requiring a minimum number of police officers based on the city's population. And while the ballot question language says a new public safety department could include police, remember, state law absolutely mandates the need for officers to respond to certain situations, certain calls, certain crimes. Now, opponents believe it's just too risky a proposition when violent crime, including homicides and carjackings, have spiked with a MPD that's already shorthanded after Floyd and the rioting that followed. But grassroots organizers of the measure who have pushed reform after reform following the death of Floyd insist this is the best way to reimagine policing here in the state's largest city.
We will also then be able to have real conversations grounded in community about what keeps people safe. And so integrating things like the Office of Violence Prevention, integrating a bunch of the programs and projects and contracts that have already been made, putting all of these into one comprehensive department so that we can truly have a holistic approach to public safety. We can finally start to tackle things like intervention and prevention, which the city has not been able to properly invest in to really tackle things like gun violence.
And Yes for Minneapolis spokeswoman Janae Bates there went on to say that whatever happens tonight, their fight, their quest to reform policing, particularly here in Minneapolis, will not end. But obviously we'll be watching those results closely. We do expect, by all accounts, this to be a razor-thin question. We've seen neighborhoods divided, community activists divided, elected officials in the Democratic Party divided. As I mentioned, the bottom of the hour here, Yes for Minneapolis will let us inside side, we'll start talking to organizers and volunteers who really spearheaded this effort over the last 17, 18 months now. But for more on the other side, for those who want to retain what MPD is today, I want to send it over across the city to my colleague Mary McGuire, who's following that side of the debate.
And Paul, there is no official election watch party planned for supporters of no on ballot question 2, but I did have a chance to catch up with Sandra Samuels a little bit earlier today. She is a longtime resident of North Minneapolis. She's the leader of a nonprofit, and she was also a plaintiff on the lawsuit that tried to get this question off of the ballot a little bit earlier this year. Of course, the Supreme Court tossed out that measure. She says while serious reform is needed within the Minneapolis Police Department following the death of George Floyd, that this is not the right answer and it's the wrong solution for Minneapolis.
It's a false choice to say if you vote yes, that you're being an ally with Black people, or it is you saying we have to do something different, right? We don't need to say yes on this ballot to do that. You can be an ally with Black people by supporting, voting with, not voting for the 75% of Black people who said they don't want fewer police in the city.
Now, Samuels also added that she believes this will be the most consequential issue that voters in Minneapolis will ever cast ballots on. She echoed a lot of what Paul and Theo are saying about this issue. She thinks that this will be a tight race, but does expect that we will have an answer tonight. Her best guess was around 9:30. Reporting live in Minneapolis, Mary McGuire, Fox 9.
All right, thank you, Mary. And we are starting to get results in, so let's take a look at question 2 on police. Right now, with about 4% of precincts reporting, a very small number, but 61% saying no, 39% saying yes. It would need 51% of the vote to pass.
Also on that Minneapolis ballot is a question about rent control. So we want to take a look at those results. Again, 4% of the precincts reporting. This is close right now with 4%, 53% yes, 47% no.
And who will lead the city of Minneapolis no matter what happens with question 2? Here are the results coming in so far. Incumbent Mayor Jacob Fry, 45%, Sheila Najad, 17%, and Kate Knuth, 11% again. Keep in mind, and if you look up the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see the percentage reporting in. That is a very low number, so stick with us. We'll get higher numbers as we go throughout the night.
And of course, we want to remind you that you can find the results for every race in the state of Minnesota. It's right now, right here on fox9.com. It's also scrolling at the bottom of your screen. And then coming up here at 9 o'clock, you can watch our newscast. We're going to be over on Fox 9 Plus, and that's where we'll continue to have all the latest results. And then after the World Series game ends, we will be back over on Fox 9 to get you up to speed.
So we just showed you those numbers so far with 4% reporting in for the mayor's race in Minneapolis, but there is a bigger story here.
Yeah, Mayor Jacob Fry is the incumbent, fighting for his seat and then hoping to get more than 50% of the vote on the first round of this ranked choice voting.
And what's been interesting is these other two candidates have campaigned against Fry by asking voters not to rank him at all. Our Courtney Godfrey is at Mayor Fry's watch party. Our Bab Santos watching his two biggest opponents, Kate Knuth and Sheila Najad.
We start with Courtney, who is live from St. Anthony, Maine for us tonight. Courtney.
Yeah, Randy, well, as my colleagues have all stated, this truly is an election about public safety. When voters went to the polls today, they were voting on a mayor largely based on where they stood on policing. Mayor Fry has never backed down on being no on question 2. He's always been about a both-and approach, as he likes to say, to policing. He believes in accountability and deep-seated reform, but he believes that we do need a Minneapolis Police Department. Now, talking to him earlier today, just a few hours ago, he was very confident in the numbers that he was seeing. Again, it's very early, but he felt like they were ahead, and he felt like they were going to have a good feeling of where they were by the end of tonight. Now, I caught up with him when he was campaigning just a few hours ago in South Minneapolis, talking to some Somali business owners. at a busy barbershop, one of the men made it clear to Fry that their concerns over public safety, the one thing on the mayor's record that many would say works against him tonight, even with people who have supported him in the past, is that he didn't call in for help the night the 3rd precinct burned, and that happened on his watch. I asked him about that, and I want you to hear what he had to say.
And throughout some of the most difficult circumstances that our city has ever experienced, I told the truth, we charted an honest and steady path, and we didn't cave to simply the loudest voices in the room. I mean, when you're mayor, you're bound to get hit from every single side. And unlike my opponents, my position has been identical throughout.
And now with ranked choice voting, as Theo Keith has told us, you need 51% in order to win in the first round. It's unlikely that Mayor Fry would get 51% in that first round, but he feels that all he needs is 43%. So that's where he's told me he feels like he's won it, is when he gets that 43%. Again, he does have a couple challengers. There are 2 individuals challenging him that are for the question 2, for the police amendment that would replace the police department with the Department of Public Safety. My colleague Babs Santos has been catching up with Sheila Najad and Kate Knuth, and he joins us now. Babs?
Thanks, Courtney. This is an election night watch party for Kate Knuth, one of the contenders facing off in this race for mayor of Minneapolis against Jacob Fry. Not a lot of people here yet, but she's expecting many of her friends and close supporters to come throughout the night. Right now, they're still kind of setting up. They're going to be watching as results come in here on this screen behind me. And not far away in the next half hour, there's another election night watch party scheduled for Sheila Najad. So we'll probably be bouncing back and forth between these 2 watch parties to get reaction from these candidates as results begin to come in. For now, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Babs, thank you very much. Let's take a look at that mayor race right now. Again, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd choice votes are coming in. I believe we have about 4% of those results coming in. If I can bring up the board right there. You can see it. Mayor Jacob Fry with 45%. Sheila Najad in 2nd place, or 2nd choice, we could call it, 17%. And your 3rd choice so far tonight is Kate Knuth at 12%. This runs pretty much exactly as our political reporter Theo Keith had suggested it would go, as those 2 candidates work together to try and defeat.
Yeah, interesting. Only 4% of the precincts, Theo, coming in, but they're from different parts of the city. So what have you seen so far?
Yeah, if we can go back to that first choice Minneapolis mayor graphic there, you'll see this. Only 4% in, but these 5 precincts that have reported so far are from 3 different wards in the city. One of them is in Ward 12, South Minneapolis. One of them is in Ward 6, that's just southeast of downtown. And one of them is in Ward 7, that's downtown and parts to the west, including Bryn Mawr. So 3 different parts of the city, all are voting strongly for the mayor at this point, and as well against the police question. It is early, it is early, it is early.
So let's look at that 2nd choice, because that does become very important, Theo, as you pointed out earlier. This, again, for our viewers right now, Mayor, Minneapolis, the person who has the most 2nd choice votes, correct?
Yeah, and so here's the main question about these 2nd choice votes. We'd have to go through and do some data analysis on where they are coming, because 2nd choice votes only come into play if the voter's 1st choice candidate gets eliminated. So if Mayor Fry was the voter's 1st choice candidate and Kate Knuth was the voter's 2nd choice candidate, 2nd choice doesn't matter because the mayor's going to be in it until the end.
Right. Let's bring up the 3rd choice, just so our viewers can understand how this race is going as well. And here's what that one looks like. Again, keep in mind 4% of the precincts reporting in, so it's a very small number, but there you can see the 3rd choice becomes Mayor Jacob Fry again. He's also the leader in your 1st choice voting.
Yeah, the mayor's going to be buoyed by these early results at his election night headquarters, although again, it's early.
All right, thank you, Theo. All right, we turn now to St. Paul, where that city's Mayor Melvin Carter is expected to hold on to his seat.
There is, though, one ballot question for the folks in St. Paul, and that is about rent control, a highly controversial issue in St. Paul.
And Hannah Flood joining us now from Mayor Carter's watch party at Allianz Field with a look at the atmosphere there and what people are talking about. Hannah.
Hey,
yes, we're at this watch party for Mayor Melvin Carter. Of course, he's the incumbent, and as Theo mentioned, he won with just over 50% of the vote in 2017. That was the first time that he ran. We do have, a crowd here. We're at the restaurant, the Brew Hall at Allianz Field, and when I came in, I asked the mayor's staff how they're feeling about tonight, and they said that they feel like he has potential to win this race in the first round, taking more than 50% of that vote in the first round. They're confident of that. In fact, they are saying that the mayor's here tonight will speak at 9:30 regardless. They're feeling confident that they're going to have some results by then. Let's now turn our attention to this renter question here in St. Paul. As you mentioned, there's this question here in Minneapolis, and I heard Amy use that magic word, permission slip, for what's happening in Minneapolis. What's happening here in St. Paul, it's much more specific and much more immediate. Tonight, voters are deciding whether or not this 3% limit on rent increases per year should be adopted. So tonight's yes or no vote is going to be the deciding factor of whether this measure goes into place or not. Now, those in favor of this proposal have said with such limited rental availability, houses and apartments in the Twin Cities, landlords have been able to hike up rent costs to a point that people can't afford. And supporters say that this measure, limiting those rent increases for landlords, that they could not increase that rent more than 3%, they say could help folks stay in their homes, not get priced out of their homes because of rising rent prices. On the other side, though, however, people who do not support this measure say that these limits on rent increases could have a big impact on which developments come to St. Paul. They say developers could choose not to have housing projects here. So they're saying that this could actually create a worse situation where there are fewer rental properties. So looking back on that mayor's race now, Melvin Carter, 7 people running against him, but tonight the campaign tells me they're confident that he'll pick up that more than 50% in the first round. And either way, we're expecting to hear from Melvin Carter here at 9:30 tonight. So be sure to join us then. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, as long as we're on the topic of city mayors, let's take a look now with, check this out, 71% of precincts reporting in. You can see where the mayor first choice votes are headed tonight. Mayor Jacob Fry, the incumbent, with 44% of first place choice votes there. Now that's moving up quick.
Yeah, around 8:30, all of these numbers started to come in, and this is question number 2, the future of the Minneapolis Police Department. And right now, 58% of the voters saying no, they do not want to replace the police department with a Department of Public Safety as it's defined in this particular ballot question. And it would need 51% of the vote to pass.
All right, taking a look at this question number 3, rent control. This is close. 51% yes, 49% no, 71% of those precincts reporting. So we'll see which precincts are left to report and how this one ends up in the wash.
All right, I want to pick Theo's brain a little bit as those numbers jumped quickly, Theo, at about 8:30 from 4% up to 71%. We can start to see a trend here now.
Yeah, they're happening. These numbers are coming in all across the city now. Obviously, 71%. That means the majority of the city is now reporting. If you put up the police question numbers again, this is going to be tough for the yes on the police question to overcome. At this late stage with 71% in, this kind of a margin, that's 17,000 votes separating the no from the yes. They would need that 17,000 with just 29% of the precincts left. That would mean they'd need to win all of those precincts huge. So I feel like this is, it's getting late early for the yes on the police question.
And you had mentioned that if Jacob Fry could get tonight to 42, 44% in that first round, that first choice, that indicated or bode well for him.
Yeah, this is exactly, when I talked to the mayor, this is exactly the type of number that he wanted, was 43 or 44%. This is what he's getting with 71% in. And so you now look at how could he get to 50 on the next round of ranked choice voting, because he's not going to win tonight with 44%. You have to get 50%. So how is he going to get to 50? Well, there's a few candidates that have smaller numbers of votes. A.J. Awed, for example, it was thought that A.J. Awed's second choice voters would vote for the mayor. And A.J. Awad has 5% of first choice votes. If all 5% of those voters go over to the mayor, well, he's now 44 plus 5%, 49%, getting awfully close to 50%. So that is why the mayor was hoping for exactly the type of number that he's getting so far, right around 44%.
And Theo, I know that you need to dive into these numbers, the precincts, who's reported, who we're still waiting on. But what did you see in early voting, sort of the trends where the turnout was high?
Well, early voting was very high in areas of downtown, areas just west of downtown, areas southeast of downtown. Parts of those areas, downtown and southeast of downtown, that's where the mayor thought he was going to do well. Mayor also thought he was going to do well in North Minneapolis, where early voting numbers, and in fact numbers throughout the day today, were very low. So not all parts of the city have had tremendously high turnout. In a few wards, including in North Minneapolis, turnout has certainly lagged, while it has been extremely strong in other parts of the city, including South Minneapolis.
And Theo, as we look at the 71% that's reported, as you look at these results, it's early, but any surprises jumping out at you, or is this falling into line as you had thought?
Well, I expected the police question to be a little tighter than it has shaken out to be. Everything on the ground, people on the ground, the limited private polling that had been done, everything was pointing to a very close race. 58-42 is not close if that's where it ends up tonight. That's a big gap. So that is a surprise, certainly.
And Theo, there is some political synergy here between how the mayor is doing and how this particular question 2 vote is going as well.
Yes, the mayor campaigned against question 2. His 2 top rivals campaigned for question 2, so we thought that they would go together. With ranked choice voting, it gets a little tricky as to who the final winner of the mayor's race is going to be, but we thought they would go together. If the mayor did well, the police question would go down. If the mayor did poorly, the police question would succeed. We're seeing the first of those scenarios play out so far tonight.
Some of the biggest complaints about question 2, Theo, were that there was a lack of a real definitive plan.
Yep.
So what were some of the biggest questions that voters had about this question in particular? And what would have happened just in the days and weeks afterwards, let's say if it passed?
Well, so if question 2 in fact goes down, this is going to be the story on it, that typically in elections, the candidate that's for change and can convey that change, that vision, will win. The question 2, yes, for Minneapolis, yes, they were for change, but they never communicated exactly what the plan would be next year once a new city council, once a new mayor got in office and had to implement this new Department of Public Safety. They never accurately and clearly defined what that new strategy would be. That is tough when you take that to voters and you ask them to make this change. That will ultimately be the story if question 2 goes down.
All right, Theo. Well, as many of you know out there, there are some seats on the Minneapolis City Council that are also being challenged tonight. One of those is Ward 4. Let's bring Ward 4 up for you to take a look at how that one is going tonight. And there are some results coming in right now. Philippe Cunningham is the incumbent in that case, but those votes are in. It shows 100% reporting in, and he has lost soundly by Latricia Vitaw there. You can see the vote difference there for that race was some 2,000 votes. That's a surprise, Theo, or not?
Well, Latricia Vitaw is well-known around the city. There was some thought that Philippe Cunningham was in trouble tonight. I'm not sure anyone expected that kind of result, so that's a big surprise. So that's the first incumbent that gets knocked off. There could be more. Do we have the results in Ward 5, the Jeremiah Ellison race? Because there was thought that he was in trouble. You see here, though, that he is leading with about 2/3 of the precincts in. There was certainly a thought, though, that Jeremiah Ellison was in trouble tonight, but in fact, it is his neighboring councilman to the north, Philippe Cunningham, the first to go down tonight.
It's tight, though. I mean, it's tighter than he probably expected, maybe, and there are still some precincts to come in with 67% reporting in right now, so this one could change yet tonight.
Yeah, no doubt about that, but really what we're looking to with these city council races is there a wave? Do a bunch of incumbents lose? People are not happy with the mayor in Minneapolis, as proven out by polls this summer. but they're also not happy with the city council. And so that was the question coming into this. If one city council candidate loses, will a bunch lose? Kevin Reich, there you go, in Ward 1. He's the incumbent. He's in a very, very close race. So it seems like with these early numbers, Cam Gordon, incumbent, tied with two candidates there. A lot of these council members appear to be in the race for their lives tonight.
Yeah, so many council seats to watch. And
Steve Fletcher.
There's another one. And he was very pro change on the police department, very much for question 2. Michael Rainville, his challenger, it was against question 2. And again, not all the precincts are in, but Steve Fletcher trailing in that race. This could be a tough night for a lot of incumbents on the city council.
And we may not know the results if it stays that close tonight. It may take a while into tomorrow morning before we get full results. But Theo, if there is a wave of change, then that also will lead to you have new people on the council, and then they have to decide how they want to move the city forward.
Yes, that's true. And we have to remember that all these city council races are also subject to ranked choice voting. So, for example, Andrea Jenkins, incumbent there, they don't have to go to the second round of ranked choice voting on that race. She got more than 50%. Same with that Philippe Cunningham race on the north side where he lost and his challenger got more than 50%. Again, don't have to go to the second round. But in some of these other races, like that Jeremiah Ellison race in Ward 5, those will need to go to successive rounds of ranked choice voting. So we can't call these races just yet, only those where a candidate has more than 50%.
I think it's interesting, and you pointed out what we should look for tonight and what our viewers and those watching us and following us online tonight should watch out for and take note of is there any similarity between how that question 2, replacing the police department, and the thoughts and efforts of those city council members over the last 6 to 8 months have been to push that through, and if the result is getting voted out of office.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, keep the one up that you're talking about right there, Lene Palmisano. She was one of the strongest advocates of keeping the Minneapolis Police Department, and she got, it's off the screen now, but 66% tonight. I didn't quite catch how many precincts were reporting, but that is a strong result for a candidate who wanted to keep the Minneapolis Police Department.
Again, yeah, and this is, Kelsey, this is the question that so much focus has been put on tonight, and that is whether to replace the police department with a public, a public community service sort of department that would include some police officers, yet we didn't know, and there was really no plan in place for how many officers that would include.
And even the language including police officers if necessary. But there were some scheduled changes that would take place if it were to pass, and some of those changes would take place by December 3rd, replacing the chief with a police commissioner. But right now, with so many precincts reporting, it looks like it's going to be a no vote on question 2.
All right, let's start from the top for you just one more time. Again, 71% of the precincts reporting in. Again, this is the city of Minneapolis, and make note of this particular board. We call them boards. It's basically the results, but this is the first choice. So in ranked choice voting, you get several choices on who you want to become mayor. Your most popular candidate tonight in the first choice is Jacob Fry, the incumbent. You can see it there, and the following 2 behind him. Now, this is the second choice. Who would be your second choice? Again, voters got to make several choices, and this is how second choice is shaping up. This is important. If some of these votes end up getting passed up the line, can change how the totals result. And third choice, again, this is how voters saw the mayor's race in Minneapolis for their third choice.
All right, let's go back again to that board for question number 2. The question on whether or not to replace the police department in Minneapolis, which has been the source of so much controversy over the last year and a half, with a Department of Public Safety. And this is an issue that has gained national attention. So there's a lot of national, even international attention on what happens in Minneapolis tonight. And right now, with 71% of the precincts reporting, those numbers coming in about 15 minutes ago, 58% of the voters are saying no at this point. That's a pretty high number, and we'll continue to watch to see as the final numbers come in tonight.
We want to take one last look as well at this question number 3 around rent control. This one, we're just, let's see, 71%. So this has been close all night, and it continues to be close. 51% yes and 49% no. This would basically give City Council, a yes vote would give City Council permission to regulate rent prices in the city of Minneapolis. They would be able to give some exemptions. They would have to sort of figure out how they want this to look moving forward. It looks different in many cities across the country. But essentially, it would give City Council control to either put forth a vote themselves to cap rent, or they could bring a specific proposal to the public, who would then vote on that as well. As you can see, just a very, very tight margin there as well.
And again, keep in mind, 71% of the precincts reporting in for the most part on some of these big ballot questions in Minneapolis tonight. Let's go to question 1, the strong mayor question. This one is also important for those in Minneapolis because, as the title would suggest, it gives the mayor more power. And right now, the yes votes are 54% on that one. The no votes are 46%. Approximately 7,000 votes separating those two.
And we have reporters out there at the watch parties for these various candidates tonight. We hope to get back to them as soon as possible for reaction and just what people are saying out there. They've been out of the polling places all day, our reporters. It's been very busy. Early voting, a historic number. Early voting is gaining in popularity, of course, every year, more people taking advantage of that opportunity. But then there were long lines at the polls again today. So
even last night, there were more than 28,000 people had voted before today. So that gives you an example and sort of a look at how popular some of these ballot questions are.
We're going to wrap up our coverage here online for now, but join us over on Fox 9 Plus. That's where we're going to have live coverage for tonight's results.
We'll also be on after tonight's game 6 of the World Series over on Fox 9. In the meantime, we are your station for these results. You'll find us all over the place tonight. We will be here with the latest results. Right now, Minneapolis is shaping up. 71% of the precincts reporting in. Those are some pretty good numbers. Stick with us.
looked at this. We need to get to a reporter. Yeah. And then we can, that allows us some regrouping time. Right.
The polls are closed and results are streaming in. A look at the big winners of heated races and the outcomes of contentious questions in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and beyond. As Election Day comes to a close, Fox 9's election coverage starts right now.
This is Fox 9 News.
Well, those votes are flooding in for more than 50 local elections and dozens more special elections across Minnesota. But all eyes really on a proposal to replace the Minneapolis Police Department, which could shape changes in policing really all across the U.S. For Kelsey Carlson and Amy Hockert, I'm Randy Meyer. Thanks for joining us tonight. A big night here in the Metro, so let's get straight to some of those numbers.
And the biggest issue, voters in Minneapolis deciding whether to replace the city's police department with a new Department of Public Safety. And with 92% of the precincts reporting tonight, it is not going to pass. 57% voting no to replacing the police department with a Department of Public Safety.
In that Minneapolis mayor race, Mayor Jacob Fry, the incumbent, also was in a tough fight for his job, but with 95% of the precincts reporting in, the first choice, he is the first choice. But again, keep in mind, in ranked choice voting, the winner must breach 50%. They must hit 51% in order to become mayor in the city of Minneapolis. And that is for a second term for Mayor Jacob Fry. He's up against Sheila Najad and Kate Knuth as the number 2 and number 3 spots there.
All right, let's go to St. Paul now, where St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter is looking to a second term. We don't have any precincts reporting, it looks like, just yet. St. Paul typically slower than Minneapolis to report, so we'll bring those to you as soon as they start to come in.
Fox 9 reporters are monitoring races across the Twin Cities, bringing you reaction from candidates on each side of the ballot. First, though, we want to go to our political analyst, Theo Keith, with a look at the night. We got numbers in pretty quickly, around 8:30, Theo, and this question number 2 is a big one. You expected it might be a little bit closer than this.
Yeah, the expectation was, from the limited amount of private polling that was done, as well as the boots on the ground perspective, was that this was going to be pretty close one way or the other. This is not close. 57 to 43%. That is a significant victory for those who wanted to keep the Minneapolis Police Department. That is a gap of, what, 18,000 votes across the city out of 135,000 votes cast. That's a significant victory for those who wanted a no vote here.
And Theo, we're going to talk a little bit about this question number 2. Do you feel like that was the question that was driving so many people to the polls today?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. The amount of national attention that was on this question in the wake of the police murder of George Floyd last summer, the efforts to get this question on last year's ballot that failed at the Minneapolis Charter Commission, then the efforts to get it on the ballot this year, ultimately going to the Minnesota Supreme Court to get it on the ballot. There was quite a saga to get this there. It was the subject of television commercials in the lead up to Election Day, and a significant victory tonight for those who wanted a no vote and to keep the police department as is. That is exactly what's going to happen.
All right, Theo, we will come back to you in just a little bit because we have a lot of races that we're watching and a lot of questions and a lot of numbers to still kind of go through and see what happens in City Council with the mayor's race and beyond. But Mary McGuire has been closely following this contentious debate. And Mary, it appears Minneapolis is leaning toward keeping the Minneapolis Police Department.
It does, and we were really expecting this to be a tight race, but we did predict that we would get results around this time tonight. But like Theo mentioned, this is not a tight race at all when it comes to question number 2 on the ballot. It appears that Minneapolis residents have rejected that proposal, overwhelmingly voting no on that ballot question. I just got off the phone with Sandra Samuels. She was a plaintiff on the lawsuit that tried to get this question tossed off the ballot earlier this year, and she tells me that she is just overjoyed. She thinks thinks that this was won in a very Minnesotan, very Midwestern way. She says we heard a lot of people who were pushing for the yes on ballot question 2. She said that they were loud and they were out there, but the majority of people that showed up to the polls today, they didn't post about it, they didn't talk about it, they didn't show up to those debates, but they did show up to those polling locations. She says that it's obvious that the recent crime that our area has been seeing 3 children shot in North Minneapolis, a rash of carjacking. She says that it's obvious that this is a sign that Minneapolis residents will not tolerate that sort of violence. But it doesn't mean, she says, that we will go back to the status quo. It doesn't mean that there won't be police accountability and police transparency, because we can't unsee what we all saw in May of 2020 and the death of George Floyd. It's obvious, she says, that there needs to be some significant reforms within the police department, but ultimately she didn't think that this ballot question was the way to achieve those goals. So she is celebrating tonight. She says that she's very proud of her city and that Minneapolisans made her so proud tonight.
All right, thank you, Mayor McGuire in Minneapolis tonight. We also want to go to Paul Bloom, who's been following this issue as well and is with the folks who were supporting ballot question number 2 and trying to get it passed. So Paul, tell us a little bit about what their concerns are tonight, how they're moving forward, and their thoughts as we have the results.
Well, be curious, Kelsey. We're expecting to hear from leadership from this grassroots, what started as a grassroots movement, born out of course, the murder of George Floyd nearly 18 months ago now on the streets of South Minneapolis. To this point, they were looking at today as history. And when we spoke to them earlier, they said regardless of the outcome today, their fight to reform this police department and really policing across America would not end with the counting of ballots tonight. Clearly, they have been defeated. They've been defeated soundly as it comes to electoral politics. But let's be frank, 40+% of this city voted basically to do away with MPD and to try something new, try a blank slate. So that 40+% can't certainly be forgotten after tonight. Now we've come inside, we've been outdoors outside City Hall this evening. We are expecting organizers at any minute, really. We were told 9 o'clock, but with the way the numbers, I think, started coming in, I think they were going to wait it out. Now with the Associated Press calling this race for a no vote, they're probably now reassessing some of their commentary that we'll hear from them. We're in a bar, the Gold Room in downtown Minneapolis. It began, they needed 20,000 signatures just to get this issue on the ballot. They successfully accomplished that. Clearly today, the votes did not come in as they had hoped. Of course, we're going to see, I think, historic turnout in the city of Minneapolis for an off-year election. I'm sure we'll hear that was a success. They've gotten national attention. Remember, this was sort of born out of that defund, abolish movement. And then they felt playing politics, getting it on the ballot, and having this reform question be voted on. I think they will look at least a grassroots effort here in Minneapolis as something of a win. Of course, nationally, it will be soundly defeated. And we'll just have to see what message plays out from here. But again, awaiting any minute now. Organizers, Kelsey, we'll send it back to you guys in the studio. But certainly if you have any questions out here, we still haven't really been able to mingle with some of these volunteers and organizers that participated in this effort to try to form a Department of Public Safety. But again, expecting to hear from them at some point in the next few minutes.
All right, we will give you time to get that done, Paul. Thank you. Another marquee race in Minneapolis, mayor. After the break, the top candidates weigh in on the results as we know them so far, with the city's ranked choice voting system possibly delaying that final call for some time.
Plus, we're going to get you caught up on your other headlines here. Some new warnings from police following another round of armed carjackings in Minneapolis. The common theme they're noticing about the drivers who are being targeted.
And children under the age of 12 are now able to get a COVID-19 vaccine when we expect Minnesota to start distributing those shots. But first, here's Ian.
Certainly a cool, if not sunny day today, and that trend continues, but we'll begin to spin around temperatures as we head toward a gorgeous weekend. I've got it in your weather first forecast coming up right here about 9:30.
And welcome back to Fox 9's election coverage. We have results coming in, especially in the city of Minneapolis.
Now, voters in Minneapolis deciding not to replace the city's police department tonight with a new Department of Public Safety. Let's look at this ballot question number 2. 56% of the voters who turned out said no to ballot question number 2, and we almost have 100% of the precincts reporting.
And how about that race for Minneapolis mayor? Incumbent Mayor Jacob Fry. Again, this is ranked choice voting, so the numbers you're seeing here are for first choice. A voter had several choices when they went to the ballot, and this is the numbers in for their first choice for mayor, keeping in mind they have to break 50% to win that in ranked choice voting. But with 96% reporting in, you can see that the incumbent, Mayor Jacob Fry, is up 43% right there.
All right, going over to St. Paul now, the race for mayor, only 2% reporting here. The threshold, 50% though, to take this. Is that right, Theo? Yeah, do you want to chime in here and explain?
Also subject to ranked choice voting, so if Melvin Carter gets 50%, he wins.
All right.
Which seems likely at this point, even though 2% are reporting in.
It does. This is nominal opposition that he faced in this race, and he won with 50% 4 years ago and didn't have to go to ranked choice voting.
Now, voters in St. Paul also deciding whether to enact one of the strictest rent control measures in the nation. Again, keep in mind, very few reporting in, but right now, that rent control measure is passing in the city of St. Paul. Basically, for those of you watching us, it would mean that landlords could only raise the rent 3% a year in the city of St. Paul, and that is a model that many cities around the country would be looking at. Fox 9's Hannah Flood joins us live from St. Paul with more on that whole issue of rent control. Hannah?
Hey, Randy. Yes, so that rent control question, you have those two questions, one in Minneapolis, one in St. Paul, but they actually are quite different. This measure here in St. Paul, it's more specific and more immediate. Tonight, voters will decide whether this actually goes into place or not. Landlords would not be able to raise the rent by more than 3% every year. Now, those who support this measure say that there's already limited availability for rental properties in the Twin Cities and feel that without this measure, landlords would be able to keep increasing rent prices and possibly drive people out of their rental properties if they couldn't afford that expensive rent anymore. Now, those who are against this proposal say that it's really going to limit the kind of housing developments that come to St. Paul, meaning that there could be an even bigger shortage of those rental properties. So it's definitely something that we're watching as those results roll in. And at 9:45 and 10 o'clock tonight, each prospective side on this issue is expecting to hold some kind of availability, assuming by then they'll have enough of those results in to make some kind of determination of which way this one swung. I'm at Allianz Field right now waiting for Mayor Melvin Carter to speak. He is expected to speak at 9:30 here, no matter what, whether we have enough of those results in or not to call the election. And even when I arrived here today, his staff told me that they were feeling confident. They feel like he'll be able to win with more than 50% in this first round of ranked choice. So really in the next 15 minutes or so here, we're expecting to hear from the mayor as we're continuing to watch these results roll in. Obviously a big difference in Minneapolis, we're getting these results a lot faster than here in St. Paul. That's because Ramsey County does all of the vote counting for St. Paul. So there's a process of getting these ballots into the county's hands for them to be counted. So that's why this process over here in Ramsey County and St. Paul is taking a bit longer here this evening. But we'll keep monitoring things and bring you those remarks from the mayor when he's expected to take the podium behind me here in about 15 minutes. Live in St. Paul, Hannah Flood, Fox 9.
All right, Hannah, thank you. In Minneapolis, incumbent Jacob Fry is facing more than a dozen challengers in a ranked choice voting system, and his two most viable challengers, Kate Knuth and Sheila Najad, have essentially teamed up to try and defeat him.
Fox 9's Courtney Godfrey is closely following this race for us now. So, Courtney, what do you have for us?
Yeah, well, Amy, I'll tell you, when voters went to the polls today in Minneapolis and when they early voted in Minneapolis, they were truly voting on a candidate based on where they stood on policing. Mayor Jacob Fry has always been about deep structural reform but not defunding or abolishing the police department. He believes that that reform must happen with a police department in place. And I will tell you, talking to him in the last several hours, he's feeling very confident tonight. It's looking good for Mayor Jacob Frey tonight. It's looking good for him to keep his seat. However, of course, in order for him to be declared the winner, he would have to get 51% of the vote in that first round, which he's not there quite yet. Speaking to him earlier today, he told me where he's going to feel confident is when he gets 43%. He's close. So we may see Mayor Frey come out here and declare himself the winner pretty soon. We know that he's in the building. We've seen his family, his wife, his parents, even his young daughter is here. Earlier, we caught up with Jacob as he did some last-minute campaigning with some Somali business leaders. And while we know that question 2 failed tonight, we asked him, if it does pass, how will you handle this going forward?
Regardless of how this vote turns out, and if this amendment passes, look, I abide by the will of the voters, and I will do everything in my capability to make sure that it works, that it's efficient, that we have both safety and accountability in our city, regardless of the outcome of that particular charter amendment. So,
obviously, Jacob Frey showing up to the office tomorrow, not having to worry about that question 2 because it has failed. But he was prepared for the possibility, although he was pretty confident that it was going to fail tonight, and also very confident that he was going to win. Again, he told me he will feel good when he gets that 43%. I have a feeling, knowing that he's in the building here, that we'll see Jacob Frey up at the podium here in not too long. And of course, we will bring you it live here on Fox 9, guys.
All right, Courtney, thank you. Well, we want to get a little analysis now on that mayor's race. As we heard from Courtney Godfrey, Mayor Frey feeling very confident. He had told our Theo Keith earlier this week. I believe, Theo, you chime in here, but 43%, he felt very confident.
Yeah, this is exactly the numbers that the mayor wanted. He was looking there in that 44% figure. And here's why. Because there are other candidates beyond what we're showing here. These are the 3 headline candidates that are really in this race. But there are other candidates that are each getting a few first choice votes apiece. Once they get eliminated, the mayor is going to get some of those voters' second choice votes, and that would push him ever closer to that 50% number that he needs. So 44% was what the mayor was looking for tonight on first choice votes in order to feel pretty good about getting reelected once we see the second choice and the third choice votes tomorrow.
And Theo, really quick, let's look at City Council. A lot of seats were in question, and what have you seen so far tonight?
Yeah, 11 incumbents were running for re-election. 2 have lost, Philippe Cunningham and Jeremy Schrader. Both of them supported question 2, the police question, and they have gone down to defeat. 4 City Council candidates have won: Andrea Jenkins, Andrew Johnson, Lisa Goodman, Lene Palmisano. 3 of the 4 of them were against question 2. So we're seeing now those pro question 2 council members faring worse than the anti question 2 council members.
Does that indicate to you at all, Theo, that you're looking at when the dust settles, if some of those incumbents that you mentioned do go down, more of them do go down, do you see a more moderate city council in Minneapolis than what we've seen in the past year?
Yes, and especially if the remaining city council candidates that will be subject to ranked choice voting, some of them are in a fight for their life tonight. Some of them will be subject to ranked choice voting. There are 5 that will be going to the second round of balloting tomorrow. If some of those incumbents lose, combined with Cunningham and Schrader, who have already lost, this will be a much different city council early next year.
All right, Theo, thank you.
All right, we want to go now to our Bab Santos live out in the field, and he's been covering the campaigns of Kate Knuth and Sheila Najad. These are in second and third place in the mayoral race in Minneapolis. So let's find out what he's finding out there on the ground. Babs?
Hey, Amy. Yeah, the room's starting to fill up. More and more people coming in. Kate Knuth's friends, supporters, some of her staff. She herself not here quite yet, but everyone here is really doing the same thing, and that is looking at their phone as these results start to come in. Right now, about 96% of precincts reporting with Jacob Frey in the lead, 43%. Kate Knuth in third place of that first choice vote at 18%. and Sheila Nazad in second place at 21%. Obviously, as we learn more about this race and these results, we're expecting these candidates to speak soon. Actually, a podium right here in front of me where she'll be doing that. We'll be here at this watch party and possibly that other one not far away, and we'll have that reaction from these candidates as we learn more about this race. Sending it back to you.
All right, thank you, Babs. Well, communities across Minnesota are counting ballots in various elections for city and county offices, school boards, referendums, and more. So all of those results are scrolling on the bottom of your screen tonight. We know that many of you are looking for other races out there, and you can quickly find them on fox9.com.
We'll keep following these numbers here in real time, but we also want to bring you up to date on some of your headlines. Starting with Minneapolis police, they're asking drivers to pay close attention to their surroundings after another flurry of carjackings last night. Now, the first happened around 6:15 p.m. just after sunset near Lake and Hennepin. A car was taken at gunpoint, and the rest of the carjackings came quickly after. In total, about 90 minutes worth. Police say there were 4 armed carjackings and 2 attempts. Victims in several cases say there were 4 suspects who approached in an SUV. Police say what is clear is that the criminals are closely watching for victims who are alone in their cars and distracted on their phones.
Sometimes we see patterns from time to time, certain vehicles, but we're not seeing that right now. It is just simply, if they can find somebody that is not paying attention, it seems to be an easy target for them. By themselves or carrying valuables. That seems to be the general theme and pattern of what's been going on lately.
And there have been 457 carjackings in Minneapolis so far this year. That's more than all of 2020, which was 3 times higher than in 2019. The same spike in carjackings is being seen in major cities all over the country.
Children as young as 5 can now start getting a pediatric dose of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. The CDC giving final clearance this evening, just hours after an advisory panel recommended the shots for children ages 5 to 11. There are about 28 million American children in this age group. Similar to adults, children will receive 2 doses 3 weeks apart. More than 20,000 pediatricians, family doctors, and pharmacies are ready to distribute the shots.
It is our ongoing responsibility to make sure as many people as possible are vaccinated and protected from COVID-19.
Children do get severe illness from COVID-19, even requiring hospitalization.
A study of more than 2,200 children found the vaccine was nearly 91% effective in preventing COVID-19 symptoms in children.
A national murder trial going on over in Wisconsin. Jurors hearing different portrayals of Kyle Rittenhouse during opening statements earlier today. Prosecutors painted Rittenhouse as an instigator, while the defense says he acted in self-defense.
But like moths to a flame, tourists from outside of our community were drawn to the chaos here in Kenosha.
Kyle Rittenhouse protected himself, protected his firearm so it couldn't be taken, used against him or other people.
Kyle Rittenhouse was 17 years old when he shot and killed 2 people during unrest after a police shooting last year. He says he was in Kenosha to protect businesses from looting and arson. Rittenhouse has pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of homicide. If convicted, he faces a mandatory life sentence.
We are not the only ones with big races tonight. Coming up, we check out other elections across the country, including Virginia's competitive governor's race.
Plus, American Airlines cancels more flights after a 5th straight day. But there is some encouraging news for those air travelers. Stay with us.
And welcome back to our election night coverage. Here's a quick look at the numbers. Voters in Minneapolis deciding whether or not to replace the city's police department with a new Department of Public Safety. That is question number 2. And the voters have spoken and they are saying no to question number 2. They want to keep the police department.
It was expected that Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey would be in a tough fight for a second term. But again, keep in mind it's ranked choice voting. So when you look at those numbers, those are not final numbers. Those are just in that first choice area of ranked choice. And in that, he is 43% of voters' first choice, which puts him well ahead of second place Sheila Najad and third place Kate Knuth.
If you look at the race for St. Paul mayor now, just 2% of those precincts reporting trickling in tonight, especially in comparison with Minneapolis. Melvin Carter showing with 54% of the vote. He does need 50% or more, more than 50% rather, to take this race. Again, just 2% reporting. We'll keep an eye on it. All right, Fox 9, keep an eye on all of these races and races across the country. You guys, we're really facing some historic races right now.
Yeah, some big races. Virginia, one of them. In Virginia, many think that this race could set the tone for the next year's midterm elections. This is the race for governor, and Democrat Terry McAuliffe taking on Republican Glenn Youngkin. This race right now has looks like Glenn Youngkin has 52% of the vote to Terry McAuliffe's 47%. It has been called, but we're looking at 87% of the precincts reporting. So leaning toward Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, right now. So he would be the first elected since 2009 as a Republican.
Let's move over to New York City. Voters there deciding on their next mayor. Very powerful political figure in the city of New York. Democrat Eric Adams defeating Republican Curtis Sliwa. Adams replaces Bill de Blasio, who was barred from running again due to term limits in the city of New York.
Another governor's seat that we're watching tonight up for grabs in New Jersey. Democratic incumbent Phil Murphy looking for a second term, and this is in a battle against Republican Jack Ciattarelli. As you can see, a very close race there with 51% of those precincts reporting Jack Ciattarelli ahead by 2% at this point.
And a historic mayoral race in Boston tonight. 2 women and 2 people of color on the ballot. Both of those are first for the city. Democrats Michelle Wu and Anissa Essaybi George are facing off. And right now, Michelle Wu, 57% of the vote. She was the favored candidate according to polling going into tonight's election.
And we know that many of you across Minnesota are looking at your local ballots as well. We're counting those in elections for city and county offices, school board, and more. The results are scrolling on the bottom of your screen. You can also find more details on those on fox9.com as well. Again, we know that there are some very important school referendums and other votes in local communities, and we do consider them important, as you do, so you can find those as well tonight.
Lines out the door for school board races in some communities, so we know that you have a lot of important races that you're watching. Just go to fox9.com.
We're going to keep an eye on all of these results. We do want to take a quick break, though, and check in with Chief Meteorologist Ian Leonard. Not a lot happening behind you there, Ian.
No, it's Maytag Repairman night for everybody in the weather department. Not a lot happening tonight, and really not a lot happening for the better part of the next 7 days. However, it all depends where we catch our air from. Now, let me explain. If you look here, we're still a mainly to partly cloudy sky. That's the thin veil of gray you see, but you can also see that veil of gray is all moving in out of the northwest. At this time of year, you roll in air out of the northwest, and it is going to be cool. You felt it through the day. Even with sunny breaks, we ran 5 to 10 degrees below average. It is very quiet. There are a few scattered flurries here toward Ely, working into, say, Grand Marais. That's it, right across the region. And the word quiet is a big part of this forecast. For tomorrow, cool is still a big part of the forecast. High temperatures today in the 30s from Ely, Hibbing, Hinckley. 40s from the metro areas south. Not overly warm, not really high temperatures. And the breeze from earlier today has calmed down considerably. And that's a bonus overnight for the kids at the bus stop tomorrow morning, because look how temperatures are dropping. 32 right now in Hinckley, 35 in Brainerd, 33 in both St. Cloud and Hutchinson, 38 right now in the metro. And even with a light puff of wind, the wind chills drop to the upper 20s. Topped out at 43 today, 49 our average high. If there is one number I want you to look at on the almanac, it is right here, sunset, 5:59. And as we work toward the weekend, you know, we fall back. So take an hour off that and start thinking about your sunsets on the wrong side of 5 p.m. by Sunday afternoon. A live look outside, 35W Bridge all lit up, 38 degrees right now with a wind chill at 33, a light breeze out of the north-northeast. I'll tell you right now, it's going to be a very quiet week of weather, plenty of sunshine, and as we take a northwest wind and slowly turn it, that will bring some much warmer temperatures as we look toward the weekend. And as I just mentioned, you look toward that weekend. Saturday night, we fall back. We get an extra hour of sleep. Yes! Yay! But that means the sun sets before 5 p.m. Sunday afternoon. So it's a give and take sort of thing at this time of year. Tomorrow morning at the bus stop, cloudy periods. Kids are going to need a coat as we wake up in the upper 20s. Tomorrow afternoon, 44 degrees, slightly below average, but a lovely fall day as we go clear and calm tomorrow night. Our flux day, our change day is here Thursday as we slowly turn the winds out of the southwest. Plenty of sunshine Friday into the day. Saturday, a southwest wind, and man, is it going to warm up. High temperatures approaching Saturday as you get ready to turn your clocks back, gain an extra hour of sleep, and then watch the sunset at around 4:52 Sunday afternoon.
Cruel.
From your deer stand.
Yeah.
Right. Or from your deer stand, not her deer stand.
From work.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the DNR announcing some walleye regulations for two popular Minnesota lakes this winter. Starting today, there is a 4 walleye bag limit on Upper Red Lake. Only one walleye longer than 17 inches is allowed. And then for anglers on Mille Lacs, they can keep one walleye between 21 and 23 inches long or one fish no longer than 28 inches. Those regulations for Mille Lacs go into effect December 1st, and then they end on February 27th of 2022.
American Airlines continuing to cancel flights for the 5th straight day. The air carrier has canceled more than 2,000 flights since last Friday, impacting more than 136,000 travelers. The pace of cancellations is slowing. American only scrapped about 3% of flights today. Experts say there will not be a quick fix here.
Take that deep breath and have a little bit of patience, because this is such a complex system. This isn't a simple problem, and that means it doesn't have a simple one-off solution.
The problem started when high winds took out service at Dallas-Fort Worth, the airline's main hub. This meant that pilots and flight attendants could not get to their assignments. American also saying about 1,800 flight attendants who were furloughed during the pandemic are returning to work this week.
Well, a federal judge in California says Kobe Bryant's widow will not have to undergo a mental exam. Vanessa Bryant is suing LA County over leaked photos taken by deputies of the helicopter crash that killed her husband, their daughter, and 7 others last year. She's claiming emotional distress. County officials wanted Vanessa Bryant to get a psychiatric evaluation to determine if they truly suffered from that emotional distress. The Reverend Jesse Jackson is out of the hospital tonight. He fell and hit his head yesterday while helping students protest campus living conditions at Howard University. Jackson's spokesperson says the 80-year-old spent the night in the hospital and is back at the university working with students once again. The civil rights leader has Parkinson's disease. He was hospitalized in August for a breakthrough COVID-19 infection.
Facebook is shutting down its face recognition system and deleting the face prints of more than 1 billion people. The decision comes 2 years after the social media giant stopped using the software on uploading photos. According to a blog post today, Facebook's parent company, Meta, had been weighing the positive uses of the technology against growing societal concerns. Amazon, Microsoft, and IBM have also ended or paused their facial recognition software.
All right, well, we are covering the election tonight. As many of you know, it's a big night in the city of Minneapolis. 2 very important issues at hand there, one being the mayor of Minneapolis, the other being ballot question number 2.
And we also have, the strong mayor issue too, and rent control that we're watching. We want to go to Theo Keith for a look at the mayor's race tonight. Jacob Fry is the incumbent, and he's leading at this point. But explain this ranked choice ballot, and if he doesn't get to 50%, what do we have to continue to watch?
So the mayor has 43% now of first choice votes. That is the number that he was looking for coming into tonight. Why would somebody be so happy with 43%? Well, there are other candidates beyond just these top 3 that we're showing you, and each of them got some first place votes. The thought is that the mayor will pick up some of those other candidates' second choice votes, and that will push him ever closer to that 50%. Sheila Nejad and Kate Knuth, who ran on this strategy of trying to get their supporters to rank them 1 and 2 and not to rank Frye, well, they've got a hurdle to overcome because they're not combined at 40%. So as we go into tomorrow, there will be more ranked choice voting tabulation. The mayor hasn't won yet, but he's certainly got the inside track.
And Theo, as we wait for Jacob Frye, we understand he's going to be speaking soon. We'll take that live as soon as we get it. We talked about this strategy between Knuth and Nejad, and that obviously seems to have not worked in this case. What do you think Mayor Frye is going to be looking at as he moves forward? What are going to be some of the things that he's going to be tackling first?
Well, the mayor had a good election night. First off, he campaigned against question 2, the police question. It has failed, and it has failed pretty resoundingly, about 56% voting no. As for the rest of the mayor's proposals, he wanted the strong mayor proposal, the proposal that would give the mayor more control over city agencies instead of city council. That has passed. That was question 1. The one thing that the mayor didn't get tonight was he said he was for this rent control proposal, question 3. It was merely a permission slip, though, for city council and the mayor to enact rent control in the future, although I will tell you, with Mayor Frye winning re-election, he's opposed to rent control as a policy, and some of these more moderate city council candidates winning election tonight, it is looking less likely that city council and the mayor might enact rent control next year.
All right, Theo, thank you. Coming up, the latest election results, plus we look at voter turnout, which has already set a record in Minneapolis for early voting. And welcome back to Fox 9's election coverage. Let's take a look at the latest results. They are coming in pretty big numbers so far.
And voters in Minneapolis have decided they do not want to replace their police department with a Department of Public Safety. Question number 2 has failed. You're looking at the mayor's first choice numbers first. Let's go over those. Jacob Fry, the incumbent, with 43% of the vote, 98% of the precincts reporting at this point. And he would have to get to 50%, so ranked choice voting will come into play, and there will be future tabulation to see and make this race official.
Can we backtrack to the police department vote? Let's see. I will tell you that it failed. That vote did fail. There it is right there. Minneapolis question 2 to replace the police department. There it is, 56 to 44%. But if you want to look at the number that means everything, 98% of the precincts reporting in, you could see the red check mark next to the no, meaning it failed.
And let's take a look at St. Paul mayor, if we can bring that up, please. Melvin Carter running for a second term here against a field of 7 other candidates. We're up to 11% now. We've gone from 0 to 2. We sat on 2 for a while, and now we're at 11%. Melvin Carter at 59%. A winner here would need more than 50% to win. And again, 11%.
Voters in St. Paul also voting on whether to enact one of the strictest rent control measures in the entire nation. Essentially, it says that landlords could only raise rent by 3% a year. And it's being watched very closely by other cities around the country as well.
Minneapolis residents also voting on a proposed charter amendment that would allow the city to enact rent control measures. And that's Minneapolis question number 3. That passes, 53% of the vote, 98% of the precincts reporting.
All right, your third place in Minneapolis was Kate Knuth. At this point, we want to check in because I believe she may be speaking right now.
Thank you. I think I was on the phone late with you, Nestor. Minneapolis has opened its hearts. The people of Minneapolis have shared with me and with every person on our team, with every single volunteer, and what is going to move Minneapolis forward from this moment is us staying in that work and that conversation with each other about our hopes and our dreams for a city that truly works for every single person in it. And I know Minneapolis is capable of making that happen, and I am so grateful for the campaign that we have built to push that work and that conversation forward in this city. We are still waiting to see the final results. We will not know tonight. But we are hopeful for the path forward, for new mayoral leadership, and we're disappointed about Charter Amendment 2, but so grateful for the many, many, especially young people who have dug in and challenged us and everyone in this city to imagine what it looks like to actually build a city in which every single person feels and is safe. And we are going to continue to be committed to that vision of a city that works for every person. And I know Minneapolis can build that future together. I look out and I see old faces I've known for a long time. My mom in the back of the room. Jojo! Shout out to Jojo. My godmother, who has literally introduced my parents, been there from the early stages of my life. Thank you. We're breaking up. To my team, I'm going to get in tears too much if I go down that path, so I will stop and just say thank you. You've been a joy to work with. And to all of the volunteers and the people of Minneapolis, we have joyful, challenging work.
All right. You've been listening to Kate Knuth there, and right to her side there you can see Mayor Jacob Fry doing what sounds like a victory cry there. He's up 43% in that first choice. Let's listen into the mayor.
Minneapolis, we did it!
To be here in a room
with people that I so dearly love, with great friends that have stood with us through thick and thin, to be working together, getting hit by every single angle from every single side, and still not caving, honoring the right thing to do no matter what, putting aside ideology, putting aside politics, putting aside the slogans and the catchphrases to recognize the truth of what people need in our city, the truth of looking out first for those that are struggling most. We've had a couple of unprecedented, unpredictable, and whatever other superlative you can attach years. It has been heavy. And through it all, we collectively, as a city, have moved beyond that which we have previously been able to do. We've recognized the magnitude of this moment. In addition to being unprecedented, it has also been remarkable in the way that so many different people from 1,000 different backgrounds have rallied around a common cause, in the way that people will look out for those that are in the roughest points of their life during a pandemic, will recognize the magnitude of a moment following the murder of George Floyd and the subsequent unrest to see through true change. And before I get too far into a speech, I have some thank yous that I want to give. First and foremost, beyond all else, I want to thank Sarah. Those of you that know Sarah know that she's extraordinary. You know that she's tough, talented, skilled, brilliant. But the reason that I love Sarah more than anything in the entire world is she has a backbone of steel. Everything that we've been through over the last couple of years, collectively, individually, and us as a family, she did while passing the bar exam, having a baby simultaneously, and she's been that rock that picks me up and puts me back together every single night. Sarah, I love you more than anything in the world. I couldn't have done this without you.
All right, you've been listening to Jacob Fry, what sounds like a victory speech, although it's not quite over yet. We have Theo Keith here to explain a little bit about how this ranked choice voting works and how we don't have final results just yet.
Yeah, that was a victory speech, but the victory's not quite in hand yet. Mayor has 43% of first choice votes. That's exactly what he wanted coming into tonight, hence the victory speech there. But in ranked choice voting, 43% of first choice votes doesn't get it done. There will be additional tabulation starting early tomorrow morning, a second round of votes. It will go to all those candidates that have already been eliminated. Voters who chose those candidates, their second choice votes will start to count and be redistributed, how about that word, among the candidates that are still viable. The mayor, now that he has 43% already of first choice votes, may get pushed over the top by those other second choice votes. That's why he's very happy with that 43% number, because on the next round, he's going to get very close to 50.
And if you look at that, go back to first choice, you'll see that those two numbers of his challengers, if we pull that up one more time for Theo, do not add up to 40%. So that makes it a little tougher for them to overtake him.
That's another important thing to notice. They add up to 39%. They needed to be higher in order to employ this strategy of don't rank Fry, rank one of us one and the other two, because once one of those candidates is eliminated in later rounds of ranked choice voting, the hope was for those two candidates that all of those votes would swing to the other candidate and push that person ahead of Fry. Doesn't look like that's going to happen, but again, that's what the tabulation tomorrow is for.
The big ballot question tonight,
Yeah.
the one that was likely driving most of these voters to the polls, was the policing question. It went down. Policing will stay the same in the city of Minneapolis. How does that play into this picture? You described it earlier almost as a sort of a wave.
Yeah, it's a wave to some degree. So this was the big one that drove voters to the polls, and no on the police question won handily by 17,000, 18,000 votes. That's a significant victory. It was thought that this question was going to be much closer. And so that does create a little bit of a wave. So down ballot, you've got the mayor's race now, and the mayor, Jacob Frey, who campaigned against this police question, he is in the driver's seat as we go into ranked choice voting tabulation tomorrow. Does it flow down to the city council races? Not necessarily. It's a mixed bag. Some city council candidates who were against question 2 won tonight, but also some candidates who were for question 2 won tonight. And some more candidates are subject to ranked choice voting tabulation tomorrow. So it's a bit of a mixed bag when we get all the way down to city council races.
And the big question will be, what is the direction of the city now, which we won't really know just yet until all of the city council member races are sort of in place and we know what the results are there. But given what we know about what was on the ballot and the way voters responded, you know, that's the big question. What direction does Minneapolis go in now?
Certainly for the activists, the next question is, what do they do? Their favored method of replacing the Minneapolis Police Department has gone down. What is their next move? As for the city council, they have a big job ahead. There has been 300 police officers who have left the MPD. Huge issue there. Department careens from crisis to crisis. It will be their job to figure out what to do there.
Explain, Theo, to our viewers why that police question was such a big question that was watched nationally. A lot was said on the national news today about what was going to happen with our police question here in Minneapolis.
Well, my goodness, it goes back to the police murder of George Floyd. Activists tried to get this question on the 2020 ballot, remember, but were rejected by the Minneapolis Charter Commission. So they tried a year later. Ultimately, they needed to strike while the iron was hot. Potentially, they could have gotten this question to pass. Last year, it goes down this year. Ultimately, in this last year, they haven't succeeded at explaining to voters what the change is, what it is specifically that they wanted to see instead of the Minneapolis Police Department. And that may be one reason why this went down tonight.
Certainly a lot of people still wanting reform.
Yes,
even though they voted no to this
including the mayor.
ballot.
He has made this point as well.
Right.
Maybe
Thanks,
a more
Theo.
defined plan next time.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back.
And welcome to Fox 9's election results tonight in Minneapolis, where there are some big issues on the ballot and voters turned out in record numbers.
We want to look first at the policing issue, or we'll start with mayor, actually, Minneapolis mayor. Jacob Frey, 43% of the vote at this point, the incumbent, 98% of the precincts reporting. So he spoke just a short while ago. Sounded a bit like a victory speech, but this is not all said and done quite yet because it is ranked choice voting. And we'll have to look at, since he didn't reach 50%, the second and third choices for other candidates and do some future tabulation before this race could be official.
And in that ballot question number 2, watched around the country, there you can see it failed. That was to replace the police department with the public safety department or some form of policing and community efforts to interchange or interact with police calls. This one failed, and it failed in a big way, 56% to 44%. That is that ballot question number 2.
Taking a look at question number 3 for Minneapolis, rent control there. This has been close all night. 99% of those precincts reporting, and the yeses have it at 53% compared to 47% no. And it sounds like we may have Jacob Frey, and we want to check in to see if we can hear what's happening. We heard from him just a few minutes ago. Let's listen in.
This was the moment for compassion and love, and the moment that we all came together and put aside our differences to recognize the true progress that we need to see in Minneapolis, that we need to see in Minnesota, that we need to see in the United States of America. This is the moment, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Minneapolis. We are coming back. Minneapolis is on a comeback.
Mayor Jacob Frey with what was a victory speech, a little early in that it's ranked choice voting, so there will still be some numbers. But mathematically speaking, he is right. It's going to be a little bit difficult for that second and third place candidates to catch him at this point.
We have Mary McGuire, who's been following the question number 2, the policing issue on the ballot. And we want to go to her live for a look at how people are reacting out there tonight. Mary?
Well, Kelsey and Randy, I spoke with supporters of no on question 2 in the Minneapolis ballot a little bit earlier today. And honestly, they said that they were nervous about this. They said that they predicted this to be a very close vote. They ultimately thought that they would prevail, but they didn't really know how this would turn out. And overwhelmingly, Minneapolis voters have rejected this proposal to create a new Department of Public Safety and disband the Minneapolis Police Department by a pretty overwhelming majority. At last check, I think it was about 18,000 votes that separated the no votes from the yes votes. I've been speaking with Bruce Dacus. He sued the city of Minneapolis to get to this question off the ballot a couple of months ago, a measure that was ultimately overturned by the Supreme Court of Minnesota. But he thinks that recent violence here in the city of Minneapolis really played a big part in the results that we saw tonight. Here's what he had to say.
I think Minneapolis came, they came to the plate and they decided that we can't live like this. It's a shame. I mean, it's horrible. I can't imagine how people can say that we don't need someone to police what is going on everywhere in the city, but primarily on the north side.
Now, with all of that being said, he also added that doesn't mean that we will go back to the city that we were and the police force that we were before May of 2020. He said that George Floyd's death really opened a lot of people's eyes here in Minnesota and really across the country and the world about the reforms that need to happen within police departments. And he says that he wants those reforms to happen, but this measure, it was just too unclear. There wasn't a plan in place, he says, and there needed to be more concrete plans and more of a vision in order for him to support this ballot measure. And he believes that police are a big part of public safety here in Minneapolis. So that's what he had to say tonight.
All right, Mary, thank you. Well, we've watched this play out all day. This is an off election year, right? We're not voting for president, yet we have seen just these record numbers at the polls in Minneapolis. We want to check in now with our Maury Glover, who saw some busy polling places today. So, Maury, what do you have?
Well, there was a pretty big rush here after work, but things seemed to calm down as the evening wore on, and there was a big turnout across the city for one of the most anticipated elections in recent memory.
Just safety concerns and that, and mostly the 3 questions on the ballot were probably the biggest in my opinion.
Now, there was a steady stream of voters all day long here at MLK Park in South Minneapolis. So far, city officials say about 55% of registered voters had cast their ballots either in person or by absentee ballot. And with so much on the line, residents say they were glad to see so many people making their voices heard at the ballot box.
We've been through a rough year as a city, and I think that people are really interested in change for our city.
I think it's great. It seems really important to get input from as many people as possible, so I think it's a good thing. I didn't mind waiting.
Now, Minneapolis set a record for early voting, more than doubling the number or the amount that it had in the last mayoral election 4 years ago, and that was the most that it's had in 45 years. Reporting live in South Minneapolis, Maury Glover, Fox 9.
All right, some surprise there, although again, this was a very popular election for the city of Minneapolis. Some very important things on the ballot. Question 2, of course, the mayor watched nationally, so not surprising that so many people did turn out.
A huge turnout. Let's go to Theo Keith here. Let's bring him in if we can. 56% of the voters turning out. I don't know if that's a record for a municipal election, but it's got to be.
Yeah, I just did the math. 56%, which is 10 percentage points higher than the old record in Minneapolis, which was about 46%. Wow. Police question drives that. Mayor's race drives that. That's huge turnout for a municipal election.
And you think about all of the things that we went through to get to this point as well. That question number 2 about policing was in the courts until right up to the start of early voting.
Yeah.
So it almost didn't even make it on the ballot.
Well, think about this. The saga legally goes back even further than that. The activists wanted to get this on the 2020 ballot. They thought that there would be the best chance of passage if it could get on last year's ballot, because that was in the same year as George Floyd's death. You run the campaign. People are thinking about changes to the police department, but their efforts were rebuffed by the Minneapolis Charter Commission, which pushed them into this year, had to get 22,000 signatures to get it on the ballot, then went through that whole saga at the city council of what explanatory language, you remember that explanatory language on the ballot?
Got really cumbersome.
It got really cumbersome because the effort was the ballot question, very simple. We need an explanatory note to explain to the voters exactly what this is going to do to the city charter. So the ballot explanatory note goes on, legal challenge. It goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. There was a 24-hour period in mid-September where this ballot was not going to be, where this question was not going to be on the ballot. Then the Minnesota Supreme Court steps in and says, no, it can be on the ballot. And that's where we got to tonight. Finally, the voters got to have a say on this, and they responded pretty resoundingly no to this giant overhaul of the police.
Which is what Jacob Fry wanted, obviously. If he wins tonight, the race is not over just yet. What will that look like for him? And then if someone like Sheila Knuth or Sheila Najad or Kate Knuth were to step into that position, what does that look like for them? Because that's not the way they wanted this to go.
The mayor got exactly what he wanted, Jacob Fry, with the police question. He wanted a no vote. That's what he got. The big question now is Chief Madera Arredondo, who has not said if he's going to continue past his current contract, which is up in January. Does the chief say, okay, I'll stick around? The mayor certainly wants that, but we'll see.
As do most residents of Minneapolis when they poll that.
Yeah, he is much more popular than the department that he leads.
Well, a big disappointment for the Yes for Minneapolis group tonight, as you point out. That question did fail. Paul Bloom is with that group. He followed that throughout the day. He's following it for actually weeks heading into this. He joins us now live. Disappointment there, Paul.
There was some disappointment, of course, with the final results when it's all said and done. But they are spinning this as a positive. 40+% of this city rejected MPD on its surface, wanted to try something new. This public safety department with a focus on public health, a commissioner, and folding in all the entities around public safety under one umbrella. They failed. But today, inside their party, we've stepped back outside. We're in front of City Hall, of course, a historic moment today. This ballot question, this grassroots group of organizers taking great pride in where they came from. Of course, this all born and ignited out of the murder of George Floyd not even 18 months ago on the streets of Minneapolis. They needed 20,000 signatures to get this question on the ballot. That is a cause for celebration. They point to the strength in their organizing efforts to battle through the courts and to let the city of Minneapolis decide its future as it relates to public safety. But of course, the issue was defeated. It went down again about 42, 43% voting no, but it has been defeated. Organizers saying, of course, their work is not done. The fight to reform policing will continue. They will likely be working or trying to work with Mayor Frey, as he apparently will win a second term here at City Hall behind me. It will be a newly shaped city council, as a couple of incumbents have been defeated and a couple more we will await ranked choice voting results in the days to follow. But again, yes, for Minneapolis, accepting defeat tonight, but said they had a lot to be proud of, their work, their organizing, their efforts to redo, reimagine policing will continue, but clearly this effort that once was about defunding and abolishing police, that has been resoundingly turned down and defeated by Minneapolis voters tonight. We'll send it back to you guys.
And Paul, of course, the issue of police reform not over yet. Many people who voted no for this particular plan still are interested in police reform. So this will be an issue moving forward. And again, an issue that received a lot of national, even international attention over the last few months and this evening as well.
Yeah, even the police chief himself said we need reform in some form, just not eliminating the police department.
All right, let's switch gears, go to St. Paul, where we're waiting for Melvin Carter, Mayor Melvin Carter, to speak and address the crowd. 40% reporting now in St. Paul, with Mayor Carter, the incumbent, at 60%. And he is going to be taking the podium here in just a moment. The winner in this race needs 51% or more to walk away with it for this to be called. So we're waiting for that to happen. And it looks like the projected winner we are calling now, Melvin Carter. Not a big surprise, Theo.
Yeah, 60% is a big number. Remember, 4 years ago, the mayor didn't have to go to ranked choice voting in order to win because he got more than 50% on election night. He's not going to have to go to ranked choice voting again. This whole ranked choice voting thing seems to work out just fine for Melvin Carter.
And one of the policies that he was in support of was also on the ballot tonight, that being the rent control one, and Mayor Carter was very much in support of that idea. Let's listen to the mayor.
Good evening. How y'all doing tonight? Are y'all feeling good tonight? Thank you for coming out here with us. I'm Melvin Carter, and I'd like to continue being the mayor of the city of St. Paul. These past 4 years have stretched our city, and they've stretched our world in ways that we just could not have imagined 4 years ago. We didn't know when we stood here 4 years ago exactly what we were signing up for. We didn't know that we were signing up for a global pandemic. We didn't know that we were signing up for all of the things that we've experienced as a part of it. What we knew is that the people of this city are an incredible group of people. What we knew is that within this city lies a limitless amount of potential. What we knew is that our ability to build an economy, our ability to build a public safety strategy, our ability to build just a way of city building that includes all of us, was going to be critical to forging the future of our city. We didn't know how urgent that would be. But what happened over these last 4 years has made the body of work that we laid out 4 years ago, has made the values that we laid out, the vision that we laid out together 4 years ago, just more urgent than ever. And we spent a lot of time knocking on doors today. My fingers and toes are numb enough to prove it. And on occasion, somebody said, "You've done a good job," to me. And I said, well, I appreciate that, but I need you to know that this really isn't about me. This is about the way our community has come together. For me, that starts with the most incredible wife I could possibly imagine. Right there. And let me tell you, I know that you know this because I brag on her all the time, but Dr. Sakina Futrell Carter is a healthcare provider who has been on the front lines fighting us through this pandemic over the past year, more than a year and a half. And I think healthcare providers need a GI Bill. That wasn't in my speech, but I'm just going to keep on saying it until somebody picks it up. That starts with my family, our children, our newest addition. It starts with my parents, my sisters, and all, you know my family. They're always here with us. It starts with our incredible team at City Hall, which includes our deputy mayor, who's here with us this afternoon, Jamie Tincher. Which includes our city council, and I see our city council president here, Amy Brimo, and thank you so much for being here. Which includes the most incredible team that I've ever seen operate in City Hall, our leadership team, our mayor's office staff. Let me tell you, a year and a half ago, I looked around our city team, our public employee team, and I could see librarians sewing masks by hand. I could see rec leaders delivering over 2 million meals to families in need. I could see firefighters stopping everything to process applications for emergency financial assistance for St. Paul residents and their families and small businesses. And I would say to them, hey, thank you. I know this isn't what you signed up for. And they said, we signed up to help people. That's right. Yeah, please. It's no mistake that we are where we are today, because this place that we're at is a place that was not built yet 4 years ago. It's a place that we've seen people of all ages, people of all cultures, people of all races, people from all neighborhoods come together. It's also a place that a year and a half ago we saw one of the hardest nights in our city's history. This place represents the building that we have to do. It represents the work that we have ahead. It represents the pain and the trauma and the frustrations that we've had, all wrapped up into one. This place that we're in. This place that we're in is an important thing to note. And I want you to think about this place that we're in. We've been through a hard last 2 years. And let me tell you, my grandfather used to say, if experience won't teach you, then nothing will. Let me tell you what I think these last 2 years have taught us. You know, Martin Luther King once said that we all live in this inescapable web of mutuality wherein what impacts one of us directly impacts all of us indirectly. Paul Wellstone said it a little more brief. He said, we all do better when we all do better. And our governor just says, we're all part of one Minnesota together. I think what they're trying to tell us is exactly what these past 2 years have taught us really clearly. And that is, as long as one member of our community can't afford a stable home when it's time to shelter in place, as long as one member of our community can't go straight to the doctor when they have symptoms or take a week off to quarantine or care for a sick child, that we are all less safe. That's right. We're in this together. We're in this together. We're in this together. And so let me tell you what we've tried to do, and I've learned it actually listening back to you over the course of these last couple of months in the course of this campaign. What we've tried to do over the past couple of years is reject an old model of city building that we've inherited, that centers around a public safety strategy that I think is borrowed from the wild, wild west. It says we're going to find all the bad guys in town and root them out of town. An economic development strategy that says we're going to look outside of our city for promise. We're going to look outside of our city for prosperity and potential, and we're going to try to bring them in. That doesn't work, because all it identifies is problems internally. And all it identifies is opportunity or potential externally. And so we're turning that on our head. And what we've tried to do with our partners on the city council, what we've tried to do with our partners on the county board, what we've tried to do with our incredible partner in Governor Walz, our incredible partners in our federal delegation, our incredible partners all around is just say every single day we're going to find a new way to bet on us. We're going to find a new way to bet on our children. We're going to find a new way to bet on our families. We're going to find a new way to bet on our businesses. We're going to find a new way to bet on our city employees. So when people ask you why we raised the minimum wage, you know why we did that, right? Because we're betting on us. When people ask us, why do we create a college savings account to put $50 in the bank to start every child on the pathway to college from birth? It's because we're betting on us. Why have we put all of these resources we have into affordable housing? It's because we're betting on us. Why did we create this guaranteed income pilot that takes families across our city and invests in them $500 a month? It's because we're betting on us. Why when we did that? Why don't we look over their shoulder and say, make sure they're not spending on this or that? It's because we believe in the goodness of our community members and we're betting on us.
That's right. You've been listening to Mayor Melvin Carter, just won his second term as mayor of St. Paul. His victory speech tonight in this race with 7 other contenders. Not a surprise here, clearly, that Melvin Carter takes this, but there are still some issues floating out there, right? We have the police chief of St. Paul, Todd Extell, leaving next year. We have this rent control measure that's up tonight, and at last check was very, very tight. So what is it that Melvin Carter is going to be facing as he moves forward?
Some big decisions upcoming. First of all, starting with who's going to be the police chief in St. Paul. Todd Extell is leaving at the end of his current contract in June. Todd Extell, the mayor, had not seen eye to eye on a number of things, including next year's budget, so that was an issue of tension for them. The mayor will also have to decide if this rent control question passes. Mayor has said it needs to be changed quickly. The St. Paul City Attorney's Office isn't quite sure that can legally be done, that it can be changed big time and quickly. So the mayor's going to have to navigate that. You see, it is close, but yes, on the rent control proposal is leading right now. So the mayor would have to navigate that if rent control passes. But I'll tell you one thing about Melvin Carter. He's got an endless amount of optimism, and he's clearly doing something right because against 7 candidates tonight, he's winning 60% of the vote.
Yeah. One of his biggest challenges, as you point out, will be whoever the next police chief is how do we budget for the, we've said a lot about the Minneapolis Police Department, but the St. Paul Police Department is going through some of the same things that Minneapolis is going through. How many officers do we fund in a city budget? That still has to be dealt with. And one of the contentious points between Axtell and Melvin Carter, despite the fact that they were very friendly in the public.
Minneapolis is down 300 officers. St. Paul's down 60 officers. But again, the chief wanted to bring that number up and actually up above so that attrition would bring it back down. The mayor didn't want to go quite that high. So that's going to be an issue for whoever the next police chief is to work with the mayor on this question.
Mayor Carter also reminding the public, and we were talking about this too while he was speaking, it has been a challenging couple of years for anybody in a leadership position. And if you could look back at Mayor Jacob Fry and Mayor Melvin Carter as they were elected first-time young mayors 4 years ago, if they, would have known all of the challenges they would have faced too. So we're looking at 2 very different mayors today because of everything that everybody has gone through.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Yeah. They took their enthusiasm, went through an incredibly challenging first term, and now they get 4 more years in the St. Paul. We don't know about Minneapolis quite yet.
Right. All right, well, for the results of elections across the state and in our communities, please go to fox9.com. We know there are school board elections you're interested in, referendums, and other city councils.
Thanks so much for watching. You can join us again on Fox 9 after tonight's World Series game.
Have a good night. We'll see you after the game.